Hello and welcome. I'm so glad you're here. In this peaceful moment, let's take a deep breath, unwind, and let the calm wash over us. I've prepared a soothing story to help you relax and find a little escape from the busy world. So, find a cozy spot, settle in, and allow yourself to be carried away by the words. Let's begin our journey together. The rain had begun softly that morning, a gentle tapping against the windows of Evelyn's small cottage. She had woken early, still wrapped in the fog of a restless night. Anxiety clung to her like a second skin, her thoughts racing, her chest tight. It had been like this for weeks. She stood by the window, cradling her mug of tea. Outside, the forest stretched wide and endless. Towering pines, moss-covered trunks, and winding paths swallowed by morning mist. The rain shimmered in the air, turning the world a soft shade of gray. "I need air," she whispered to herself. Throwing on her coat, Evelyn stepped outside. The cool drizzle kissed her face, and for a moment, she closed her eyes, letting the quiet soak into her skin. The air smelled of earth, rich and clean, and the whispering leaves seemed to invite her in. The path she followed was narrow, twisting gently between towering trees. Rain pattered softly on the canopy above, creating a rhythm that felt steady, grounding. Evelyn focused on her footsteps. 1, 2, 3, her breathing slowing to match the beat. For the first time in weeks, her thoughts quieted. She stopped near an old fallen log draped in emerald moss. Droplets clung to the bark like jewels, glistening in the dim light. Evelyn knelt beside it, her fingers tracing the cool, damp wood. A small snail inched along the surface, unhurried and content. "Just one step at a time," she murmured. The snail carried no worry, no burden. It simply moved forward. Evelyn found a flat rock nearby and sat down. The forest seemed to breathe with her, each gust of wind stirring the leaves in a soft sigh. As her pulse slowed, she listened to the rain, a steady heartbeat, and felt something shift inside her. The storm inside her mind had not yet passed, but here, in the quiet woods, she felt its power fading. She stayed there until the rain began to ease, the clouds breaking enough for pale light to filter through the branches. Evelyn stood, stretching her arms wide and filling her lungs with the fresh, rain-scented air. "Tomorrow," she whispered, "I'll walk a little farther." And with that promise, she turned back toward home, feeling, for the first time in weeks, that peace might be closer than she thought. Evelyn awoke the next morning to a sky washed in silver light. The rain had passed, leaving beads of water clinging to the leaves outside her window. The air felt fresh, crisp, and inviting. "Today," she whispered to herself, "I'll go farther." She set out just after breakfast, her boots crunching softly against the damp earth. The forest seemed different, not just quieter, but calmer. Each leaf sparkled with lingering raindrops, and the air smelled deeply of pine and soil. Evelyn inhaled slowly, savoring the scent. Her anxiety, once so heavy, seemed to ebb with each step. This time, she let her path meander. A narrow trail, one she'd never noticed before, veered off between two gnarled trees. The way twisted downward, and Evelyn followed without hesitation. The deeper she walked, the richer the silence became. Birds flitted above, their songs weaving faint melodies through the air. Evelyn's thoughts softened, the mental noise dimming to a quiet murmur. Her pulse slowed, her breaths deepened. The tension in her chest unraveled, like a knot coming loose. Soon she reached a clearing, a hidden pocket of earth cradled by trees. In the center, a small pond shimmered, reflecting the sky. Wildflowers bloomed along its edge, their petals heavy with dew. Evelyn knelt by the water's edge and trailed her fingers through the cool surface, watching ripples dance outward in widening rings. For the first time in weeks, her mind was still. She closed her eyes and listened. The water lapped gently against the stones. Birds sang in soft, lilting calls. And then, somewhere distant, the faintest chime of wind brushing against leaves. The sound was delicate yet clear, almost like a voice whispering through the trees. "You're safe here," Evelyn murmured to herself, feeling the warmth of her own words. She believed it. By the time she returned to her cottage, the sky was soft with dusk. The air smelled faintly of wood smoke, and the comforting hush of evening settled over her. She curled into her armchair with a book, feeling calmer than she had in a long time. The forest had given her something, not just peace, but a place where her mind could finally rest. "Tomorrow," she promised, "I'll go even farther." The morning air greeted Evelyn with a crisp chill as she stepped outside. The scent of damp earth lingered, and the trees still glistened with the rain's memory. Today, the forest seemed to hum with life, a gentle rhythm she could feel in her chest. Evelyn followed the familiar path, stepping carefully over roots and stones. The forest's quiet now felt inviting, like an old friend waiting patiently for her return. Her thoughts, which once swirled in endless loops, drifted softly now, a distant breeze rather than a storm. The narrow path she had found the day before appeared again, winding between the same gnarled trees. Today, she followed it deeper. The air cooled as the trees grew taller and denser, their trunks draped in tangled ivy. Evelyn let her fingers graze the bark as she walked, grounding herself in the rough, solid texture. She reached the pond once more, its surface like glass, reflecting the sky's pale blue. But this time, she noticed something new, a narrow footpath that circled the water's edge and disappeared into the trees. Curiosity stirred within her. With steady steps, Evelyn followed the path. The forest seemed to breathe with her as she moved. She passed clusters of ferns, their fronds curling like tiny fingers. The ground was soft with moss, muffling her footsteps. It felt like stepping through a dream. After a while, Evelyn found herself standing before a small wooden bench. It looked old, worn with age, yet sturdy. Beside it, a stone marker stood crookedly in the earth, covered in patches of lichen. She wiped away some of the moss and uncovered a faint inscription: "Rest here and know peace." Evelyn sat down, feeling the cool wood beneath her. A soft breeze rustled the leaves, and in that stillness, she felt something shift, like a knot inside her chest finally coming undone. Her eyes grew heavy as her breathing slowed. The sound of the wind lulled her, and without realizing it, she closed her eyes. In her half-dream state, Evelyn heard whispers, gentle, comforting words that she couldn't quite understand. They flowed like the rustling of leaves, calm and familiar. For the first time in weeks, she felt no tension in her muscles, no pressure in her thoughts, just peace. When she finally opened her eyes, the sun had dipped low, casting the forest in gold. Evelyn felt lighter, as though she had left something heavy behind. "Tomorrow," she whispered again, smiling softly to herself, "I'll go even farther." Evelyn returned to the forest the next morning, drawn back by the sense of calm she'd found the day before. The air felt warmer now, and the morning sunlight streamed through the branches, casting golden beams on the damp earth. Birds chattered overhead, their songs blending with the soft rustle of leaves. She found her way to the pond with ease, its glassy surface reflecting the sky. The stone bench awaited her just beyond it. Evelyn approached slowly, her fingers brushing the smooth inscription once more: "Rest here and know peace." She sat down, her breathing steady. The wind sighed gently through the trees, and Evelyn closed her eyes. The whispers returned, quiet, barely audible words weaving through the breeze. This time, she focused on them, straining to catch their meaning. All things pass. The words were faint, like the memory of a voice. Yet they wrapped around her like a comforting embrace. Evelyn leaned back, closing her eyes as her heartbeat steadied. For minutes, or perhaps hours, she remained like that, enveloped in the quiet. When she opened her eyes, she felt calm, clearer than before. Rising from the bench, she turned to follow the path deeper into the forest. The trail wound between towering trees, their branches arching overhead like a cathedral ceiling. The air smelled rich, earth, pine, and something faintly sweet. She soon reached a break in the trees where a meadow stretched out before her, vibrant with wildflowers. The scent of lavender drifted on the air, and bees hummed lazily from blossom to blossom. A small wooden bridge crossed a narrow stream at the far end. Evelyn knelt by the water's edge, dipping her fingers into the cool stream. The ripples danced away, and she found herself whispering softly, "All things pass." She stayed there for some time, listening to the water, feeling its gentle flow against her fingers. The tension that had once felt so constant seemed to melt away. As the afternoon light began to fade, Evelyn turned back toward home. The air around her felt softer somehow, as if the forest itself had embraced her. "Tomorrow," she whispered once more, "I'll follow the stream." The next morning, Evelyn returned to the stream. The air was cool and fresh, and the sound of trickling water seemed to call her forward. She followed the gentle flow, weaving between trees and stepping over twisted roots. Birds flitted above her, their songs threading softly through the air. The path was narrow but clear, winding alongside the water. Moss clung to rocks at the stream's edge, and now and then she glimpsed tiny silver fish darting beneath the surface. Evelyn felt lighter than she had in weeks. Each step felt purposeful yet effortless, as if the forest itself was guiding her. Soon, the stream curved toward a cluster of old trees, gnarled and massive, their branches sprawling in every direction. The roots had risen from the earth like the fingers of a giant hand. Nestled between them was a small wooden shrine, weathered and adorned with delicate carvings of leaves and vines. Curious, Evelyn knelt beside it. A tiny stone bowl rested at the shrine's base, filled with clear water. Reflexively, Evelyn dipped her fingers in. The water was cold, and yet somehow comforting. The whispers returned, clearer now. Soft voices, gentle and warm. "You are strong. You are safe. You are home." The words settled in her chest like a steady heartbeat. Evelyn closed her eyes and let her breathing slow, her mind calming to match the rhythm of the forest. After a while, Evelyn stood and turned back. The air seemed fresher, the colors of the leaves more vivid. Birds flitted closer now, unafraid. Even the whispers seemed to linger, as if carried gently in the wind. That night, Evelyn sat by her window with a cup of tea, gazing out at the darkened trees. The whispers seemed to linger in her thoughts, comforting, steady. "Tomorrow," she whispered to herself once again, "I'll visit the shrine." The morning mist clung to Evelyn's skin as she returned to the shrine. The air smelled faintly of pine and damp earth, and the forest seemed quieter than usual, as if holding its breath. She followed the stream again, this time feeling more connected to the winding path beneath her feet. Each step seemed to align with her heartbeat, steady and calm. When she reached the shrine, the whispers returned almost immediately. They seemed to rise from the trees, swirling softly through the air like drifting leaves. Evelyn knelt beside the stone bowl and touched the cool water once more. "You are strong. You are safe. You are home." The words were clearer than before, almost as if they were being spoken directly into her mind. Evelyn felt warmth spreading through her fingers, traveling up her arms and into her chest. The knot of anxiety that had once seemed permanent felt looser, quieter, like a distant storm fading on the horizon. She sat before the shrine for what felt like hours, her eyes closed, breathing deeply. The whispers now carried memories, distant yet familiar. Her grandmother's soft voice singing lullabies. Her father teaching her to ride a bike. Her mother brushing her hair as the rain pattered softly outside her window. Each memory seemed to blend with the wind, filling Evelyn with a sense of safety she'd forgotten. When she finally stood, Evelyn felt lighter. As she turned back toward the path home, she noticed something new, a small wooden carving resting beside the shrine's base. It was simple but beautiful, a figure standing beneath a tree, arms outstretched toward the sky. She picked it up carefully, feeling the smooth wood against her palm. That evening, Evelyn placed the carving on her windowsill, where it caught the golden glow of the setting sun. The whispers followed her to bed that night, faint yet comforting, and as her eyes closed, she drifted off to sleep faster than she had in months. For the first time in a long time, Evelyn felt safe. She felt whole. The following morning, Evelyn woke with a quiet sense of purpose. The carving on her windowsill seemed to glow faintly in the morning light, as if urging her to return to the shrine. She packed a small bag, water, a blanket, and a notebook, then set off into the woods once again. The forest felt different this time, warmer, more alive. Birds called from unseen branches, and the scent of pine filled the air. The wind stirred gently through the leaves, and Evelyn could almost hear the whispers in its breath. When she reached the shrine, she knelt again before the stone bowl, dipping her fingers into the cool water. The whispers came immediately, clearer than ever before. This time, they didn't speak in fragments, but in full, flowing sentences. You have carried a heavy heart, but you are not alone. You are stronger than you know. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. The whispers felt like a voice she'd known her entire life, familiar, like family. She let the words fill her, their warmth spreading through her chest. Let go of the weight you carry, the voice urged. The forest is here. The wind will carry your pain. The earth will ground your fears. The stream will wash away your sorrow. Evelyn closed her eyes and let her thoughts drift. Memories of grief surfaced, moments she had buried deep inside. The loneliness she'd carried since her parents' passing. The quiet ache of self-doubt and fear. She felt tears slip down her cheeks, yet they brought no shame, only relief. Let it go, the voice whispered again, softer now. Let the forest hold it for you. Evelyn leaned forward, cupping some of the cool water in her hands. She let it spill over her fingers, imagining her worries washing away with it. The whispers grew faint, fading back into the trees. For a long while, Evelyn sat in the clearing, her breathing steady and calm. The trees seemed to stand taller, the sky seemed clearer, and for the first time in years, Evelyn felt truly at peace. That night, as she lay in bed, Evelyn heard the faintest whisper linger in her mind, a soft promise that seemed to cradle her heart. You are safe now. The next morning, Evelyn returned to the forest once again, drawn by the calm she had found at the shrine. This time, she carried a small bundle of dried flowers, a quiet offering of gratitude. As she walked, the forest seemed to greet her like an old friend. Birds flitted closer, the breeze wrapped around her like a gentle embrace, and even the crunch of leaves beneath her boots seemed softer. When she reached the shrine, Evelyn knelt once more. She placed the flowers carefully beside the stone bowl, their soft petals a burst of color against the dark earth. Dipping her fingers into the water again, she closed her eyes. The whispers returned, warm and familiar. You have given your sorrow, now take back your strength. Evelyn felt something shift within her, a quiet confidence stirring, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. She sat by the shrine for hours, listening to the sounds of the forest and breathing in the fresh air. Her mind wandered, not with worry, but with wonder. She thought of the life she wanted to rebuild, the friendships she missed, the small joys she had overlooked. Each thought seemed lighter now, like leaves drifting on the wind. Before leaving, Evelyn reached for the wooden carving on her windowsill and placed it beside the shrine. She whispered softly, "Thank you." As she turned to leave, a single feather drifted down from the trees, landing gently on her path. She picked it up, a delicate white plume, impossibly soft. She smiled, tucking it into her pocket. That night, Evelyn slept deeply. No racing thoughts, no cold anxiety twisting in her chest, only the warmth of quiet dreams. The whisper followed her still, a faint, gentle promise that seemed to hum in her very breath. You are whole, you are strong, you are free. Days turned into weeks, and Evelyn's life began to blossom in ways she hadn't imagined. The anxiety that once held her captive seemed to loosen its grip, like vines retreating from a sunlit path. She returned to the shrine often, sometimes to sit quietly and sometimes to offer tokens of thanks. A sprig of lavender, a polished stone, a folded note of gratitude. One afternoon, Evelyn ventured deeper into the forest than she ever had before. The trees grew denser, their branches weaving a canopy so thick it muted the world outside. Yet she felt no fear, only a quiet curiosity guiding her steps. The whispers were faint but steady, urging her onward. The air seemed to thrum with energy as she reached a clearing, one she had never seen before. In the center stood an ancient tree, its trunk twisted and vast. Vines coiled like serpents around its branches, and flowers bloomed in delicate clusters at its roots. The air smelled sweet, like earth after rain. Evelyn knelt before the tree and pressed her palm to its bark. The warmth that met her fingertips was undeniable, a pulse steady and strong, like a heartbeat. The whispers returned, clearer than ever. You are part of us. We are part of you. Carry our peace with you. A tear slipped down Evelyn's cheek, not from sadness, but from something deeper, something whole. She felt the strength of the earth beneath her, the breath of the wind around her, and the calm presence of the forest weaving through her very soul. As Evelyn turned to leave, she felt no urgency, only a profound sense of belonging. The path home felt familiar now, as though the forest had always been waiting for her to return. That evening, Evelyn brewed tea by her window. The feather still rested on her table, and she smiled softly as she tucked it into her journal. The whispers lingered faintly in her thoughts, no longer urgent or mysterious, simply comforting, like a friend's gentle voice. You are whole, you are strong, you are home.
In the weeks that followed, Evelyn's life felt lighter. The whispers had faded, not gone, but now a soft presence in her heart. Each morning brought calm, and each evening comfort. One afternoon, Evelyn returned to the shrine with her journal and tea. The forest greeted her with sunlight dancing through the trees. She sat quietly, reflecting on her journey. The pages once filled with pain now spoke of peace and healing. A deer appeared between the trees, its gaze calm and steady. Evelyn smiled, whispering softly, "Thank you." That night, as she lay in bed, the whispers returned one last time, a quiet farewell. You are safe, you are whole, you are loved.
Thank you for listening, and now enjoy the sounds of nature. I wish you a peaceful sleep. Good night.